morning, good evening, depends upon where you are in this world. Where I am is in the Daryl section of Miami, Florida, with my good friend and counterpart, Captain Miguel Peralta, with Miami-Dade Fire Department Training and Safety Division. I'm Bill Gustin, the oldest man in the room, and today's topic will not be the coronavirus. So if you're looking forward to that, we hear enough about that. So let's discuss something that we have been planning on doing for a long time. I was tasked with revising, and I still am, my department's Miami-Dade's high-rise procedure. And I do what everybody else does. I get Clark County, Nevada's, I get Fairfax County or Northern Virginia regional high-rise plans. When the smaller departments, the regional plans, number of departments, and a 52-page document from the Chicago Fire Department. I was impressed with all of them, but highly impressed with Chicago because of the priorities that they make. They are one department, and I'm very proud to say that my dad spent 33 years on the Chicago Fire Department. Chicago is one city that gets it, that what they educate the occupants of high-rise buildings before a fire and how they advise them during a fire or emergency on the fire alarm voice command system is every bit as important as putting water on the fire. We have to control the occupants in order to control the fire. So I've got a couple of fellas here from Chicago. I think this is interesting because our friend Jimmy Davis, Lieutenant Jimmy Davis, and Guido, that is Calcagno, our brothers from Chicago, the Windy City, actually have the same job basically that we do, and that is inviting, I use the word inviting instead of compelling, inviting companies to come to the academy and run them through high-rise standpipe operations. So we're going to go around the room here and just do a little self-introduction, starting with you, Jimmy. Go ahead, Jimmy Davis.
Thanks, Cap, for having me, fire engineering, and everyone involved in making this happen today. Before I start my introduction, I just want to take my hat off to the first responders. Of course, we talked earlier about a line of duty death or the COVID response where we lost a member. My heart goes out to them, but also for the fine, exceptional job these people are doing day in and day out, serving our citizens, and that's the entire fire service. So I want to make sure I mention that. Myself, I'm Lieutenant Jimmy Davis with Chicago Fire Department. You know what? 25 years I've been on the job. I just realized that. And I remember, I think it was Chief Norman told me this. Kid, that's going to fly so quick. And it did fly. So I'm assigned over at the Training Academy. I did a lot of work with this high-rise, which some of the subjects we're going to talk about today. But thanks again for having me. We'll move on.
Jimmy, we planned on doing this several months back. Unfortunately, you lost your mom. And but anyway, here we are today, and we're going to deal with the matter at hand. Before I go any further, I should have done this first. Let's give a shout out to our sponsor, and that is Key Hose. That's keyhose.com. Miguel, less than an hour ago, you had Key Hose in your hand and was directing a stream with our 2-inch hose with 2.5-inch couplings. That's what we use for our standpipe operations. I'm not saying that's what any other department needs to do. I am saying that every department needs to look at their needs in terms of standpipe operations, but you cannot beat Key when you're operating off of a standpipe in a confined space like a stairway. You're bound to have kinks. You're bound to have kinks. Take the Key challenge. Try to kink the Key hose, the combat ready, the true ID. It's hard to kink that hose. So Miguel, can you tell a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm the training captain for our North End Division. Been there for about 2 years as the training captain. Been out in training since October of 2016, and got 10 years less than Jimmy. Actually, in 2 days, I'll have my 15-year anniversary. So it's definitely flown by for sure. I wouldn't change it for the world. But yeah, feel very, very fortunate, very blessed, and especially to be sitting next to this guy. That's where my office is, right next to the good captain. So I've learned so much in those 2 years since I've been there. So again, doubly blessed for that.
I do believe that Captain Lamping is on duty at 38, and so he could be preoccupied.
I'm good, brother. I'm good.
You're on duty, right?
I'm good. I got a mechanic. Come here, Glenn. Come here.
Bring the mechanic over.
This is the new SOP in Clark County Fire now. Masks full time.
I like it. I like it.
Yep.
And I like the grooming.
Oh,
I definitely like the grooming.
Yeah.
Look at that. Hey, you're not going to believe this. So we do an instructional video on how to don the N95 mask. And who do they use? They use a guy like the head that you just saw that resembles the profile of a ball bearing. I mean, how easy is it to put on the mask when it just glides over your head? And I said, yeah, his name is Javier Crespo.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, Javier, I bet you took Pam and sprayed it on your bald head so that the mask strap would go on real easy. Captain Lamping, new captain at Engine Company 38, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes,
a little
sir.
bit about yourself, sir.
Clark County Fire Department here in Southern Nevada. Been on the job 22 years. Out of 22 years, spent 17 years on Las Vegas Boulevard running high-rise fires and incidents. Just recently went over to Firehouse 38, where I have a single engine and rescue. So that's the only thing exciting about me. I can show you some pictures of my kids or something if you want that, but that's about all I got here.
Clark, what have you
Yes,
been
sir.
doing on your days off, Clark?
Homeschooling. We've been homeschooling, and we had a situation the other day. Apparently the kid's teacher was drunk while he was homeschooling. So we had a report there, and another kid got struck at school. So I think CPS is going to be showing up real soon here.
Okay. Daryl Liggins, sir.
How are you guys doing? Daryl Liggins, Oakland, California. I stopped counting the years because it makes me feel older than I actually am. But yeah, I work on an engine company as a captain, and looking forward to talking today.
I met Daryl in Modesto, California. I didn't even know who he was. And I had a picture of him. I was very impressed with the way that he handled himself and his students. And I said, who is this guy? And I found out, and when we've been doing this now for what, 3 years? So he's one of our regular guests. 4 years.
I think he did 3.
3 years. 3 years.
Yeah.
Sam Hittle from Wichita. What do you got for us?
Captain on Rescue 2 in Wichita, Kansas, or Wichita, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
Wichita. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We have a neighborhood in the Miami area called Westchester, but depending upon what ethnicity you are, it's commonly called Wichita. Mary Krima from Wichita. Dan Shaw.
Hey, good afternoon. Always a pleasure. Dan Shaw, Deputy Chief in Fairfax, Virginia, and have the pleasure of walking us alongside with Sammy and running Traditions Training. And looking forward to another great conversation this month.
And then Guido Calcagno.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm just a simple firefighter, paramedic, and I've been instructing with Jimmy since we started rolling out the high-rise operations here in Chicago. So a few things here and there. I'm nothing exciting, so here I am.
And Captain Mike.
Mike Dugan. I'm a retired captain from the FDNY and learning how to teach remotely. I started this morning at 8:30 teaching a fire safety director class, and now I'm here. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, I'm going to turn the program over now to Jimmy and Guido, and then to Miguel. And let's talk about what we have in common, what Miguel has in common with Jimmy and Guido. Miguel is the manager for our high-rise standpipe operations training. As I said, that's where we invite companies and we divide the companies by north and south so we don't deplete the amount of companies out of service. We're going to let our special guest begin. Well, actually, you're one of our special guests, but we'll let our special guest from Chicago, if you could give us kind of an overview why you have the training. Obviously, your candidates are well trained, and you do occasionally have a high-rise standpipe job. The other thing I'd like for you to talk about is your ability to, and I believe it started in the projects because of the vandalized standpipes. Chicago's ability to deliver a master stream from a deck gun up to, I think it's about the 15th floor. And I want to give a shout out to one of your brethren, Jimmy and Guido, and that would be Richie Stack. Is that correct?
Yeah, Kim.
Excellent webcast. Blitz attack using booster tank water. Highly, highly recommended. But Chicago can deliver a master stream from a deck gun, it seems, with rifle shot accuracy, with a combination of stack tips and stream chapers. If you could elaborate on that, I'm going to turn the program over for the next few minutes to Jimmy and Guido.
Yeah, Cap, I'm going to address that first question about the exterior stream. This was predominantly a tactic that was used by Engine 61. I know, Cap, you're familiar with a lot of Chicago and the area, which that area was a huge high density of project buildings, the Robert Taylor homes. Matter of fact, I think those were the largest density or clusters of project buildings in the country. Now, Engine 61 just sat out the doorstep just outside of these projects. They developed this deck gun, and I wish I had a picture of it. And that, by all means and rightfulness, that is your long barrel. Now, they configured a deck gun that was able to reach 15, 16, maybe 17 stories. All right, that was standard practice because of those project buildings. Hey, that was a walk-up. Those elevators weren't working. All right, and if they were working, they were controlled by tenants within that building. So in order, we've heard that term so much in the fire service, the reflex time, the time to get your manpower, your equipment, your assets up to that fire floor. The time is ticking away. So that became a standardized practice with Engine 61. And again, even fast forwarding to today, if you have that opportunity and that opportunity presents itself, all right, to use that exterior attack, again, to take a chunk out of that reflex time, by all means do that. You figure we use as a benchmark in the fire service for the time to get, again, your equipment, your assets, getting water on that fire. It could be anywhere from 20, 25 minutes. We figure maybe getting our firemen again or equipment up there about a minute per floor. That 20 to 25 is pretty reasonable. So again, in our SOPs, we actually highly encourage using that deck gun. Take a good substantial chunk, hopefully, out of this fire, And then that second question, Cap, what was that one? I got all excited about the deck gun there. What was the second part of the
well,
the first one?
There's got to be a reason why you're having this program. I mean, was there a problem, or is it just room for improvement? Frankly, we had a problem.
Yeah.
We're fixing a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We are responding as the members of the Training and Safety Division. We are responding to the needs of operations. We need to be on the same page. And when we're going to relate, what we're going to do? We're going to air our dirty laundry in public because every department has their own dirty laundry. Okay. And as long as you're willing to share the experience and admit that there's a deficiency and correct it, then I don't see that there's any problem.
Yeah, Kip, to answer that first question about that, and I'm sure everyone has heard of the Cook County building, 69 West Washington, where 6 lives were claimed in that stairwell. In essence, that stairwell is nothing but a chimney. Some departments learn the hard way. a learning lesson. We learned that day. Ever since that day, we reviewed the way that we approach, the way that we see, the way that we operate in high-rise buildings was done resultant of that 69 West Washington fire. Fast forward a year later to the LaSalle Bank building fire, which was full of building occupants. The outcome was much different. All right. We were able to, again, through the SOPs and in getting an operational guideline to address the safety. Again, occupant safety is so important. That's one thing about the SOPs. A lot of department SOPs emphasize that of getting water. Yes, I agree with them. But also, just as importantly as well, is the protection of the occupants, primarily that of being from smoke. Now, what gave birth from that 69 West Washington fire was a development of a new SOP, all right? And going back last summer, we went ahead and looked at our SOP, which I encourage and recommend every department. Go and visit your SOPs from time to time. Just because you put one out 10 years ago is way too far back in the past. You got to review your stuff periodically. So last year, we reviewed our procedures when it comes specifically to the high rise, made some changes, changed some minor things, but tweaked it in such a way, in such a manner that everyone comprehends it. I look at that SOP as that kind of like your music sheet, all right? Designed so that every member of that band, and Miguel, you play the band,
Yeah.
that we're all operating on the same sheet of the music. Because you know what happens when someone's out of tune or they can't sing. It sounds like crap. So the development of that SOPs, we did that last year. With the hands-on, it wasn't so much because of a problem. Planning and preparation, essential, all right, for your success in high-rise operations. But you got to train. You got to do the physical, the mechanics. So we went back and decided, you know what, let's run through this. And not only mention that, we put 1,200 people. We put about a third of our department through this training program. We still have another 2/3 to capture. But it gave us the ability to roll out some of our new tools. All right. We also included that 45-degree elbow is new to our high-rise caching. All right. And we tried various nozzles out. So it was a learning process for everyone, but to also reinforce your mechanics. All right. When you're confronted with a high rise. The one thing that I saw out of this training, I know Guido's going to talk a lot about this, is that the appreciation of how many people are needed to orchestrate the manpower that it takes to move that 2.5 line. It isn't something that just magically happens. So we got a really great appreciation of that difficulty, but it also emphasized the discipline, the coordination, and the communication. But it wasn't from a fact of a problem. We've come a long way since that 2003 Cook County building fire. And we're proud of it, you know, but we are trying to always be on point with this. And we understand the challenges, the inherent challenges, the dynamics involved with high-rise firefighting. And it's always a good time, always to address this, but they have an aggressive program, which I think we had. And I look forward to restarting this one up too.
Yeah. Now, you will have an acquired structure, I understand then, Jimmy, pretty soon?
Yeah, Kip, to answer that, we've acquired a terminology. We still call it a high rise. Some call it a mid rise. It I guess depends on what region of the country you're in. We do have access, and we've been using a vacant building, which is going to be used later down the road for college. I believe it's, I don't remember the college, but they're going to make it dorms. But what it is, it represents that of a typical apartment compartmentized high rise. I believe it's a 12-story building. I got to do one training drill in there with the companies, and then again we timed out with the Chicago weather. Next thing you know, it's 70 degrees, and the following day it's below zero. You know the weather real good out here. Yeah. So we had to stop it because of the weather. But I tell you what, I was really happy and impressed with this building, and in the feedback as well from the companies participating, they enjoyed it. And you run a very good drill when they say this. We got to do more of this. And I agree.
See, the deficiency, and it actually breeds deficiency, is the training tower mentality. Now, we're lucky, Miguel and I can operate. We have a 50-foot hallway with compartment doors, okay? Most training towers do not. So your standpipe evolution is just what we were talking about yesterday, Jimmy. Distance between standpipe outlets. So many of these evolutions are predicated on what we've trained in the training tower, and that's 3 lengths. Floor below, stairway, fire floor, boom. Well, it's not going to be that way. You get a center hallway building, and as we discussed, Jim, if it's not sprinklered, the standpipe outlets could be 130 feet apart. Now, if they're further than that, they put one in the hallway tenant space. That's not going to do us any good for the most part. I got a question for Guido. When you call in these companies for your standpipe training, they're all from the same battalion, or you pick them from different locations? So these are guys that have never worked together.
Well, some haven't worked together, but they are citywide, so we don't deplete one particular area.
Yeah.
When we started rolling out the training, we were bringing in companies that were, quote unquote, considered high risk or high rise companies.
Yeah.
Higher prevalence of responding to a high rise fire. And we left a lot of leeway to them. We did have a structured program. We went through teaching, and then when we ran through hands-on scenarios, we said, now apply what you've just learned. We gave them a typical fire investigation team report. We said, this is your standpipe. This is where your fire is at. Here's what we would recommend, but do as you will. And then companies would all try their own thing. And then when they were done, we would critique it. And you'd, believe it or not, you'd have a lot of guys that kind of ate up some of the pride and said, hey, you know what, you were right. Or you know what, as we go through the next evolution, can we try doing it this way? Or can we run one more so we could try doing this to see how it works? And it was somewhat surprising to us as a group to have guys come down for mandatory training and ask you if they could either come back or run through another evolution to try and improve. Because running through this training with a significant number of members from the city, we did not see one single company come through and rock everything like an all-star. And a lot of them at the end, admitted it, like, hey, I thought I would one up you, and we couldn't do it. And it was one of those where you don't need to say anything because you kind of knew where it was. You just kind of shook your head and said, well, there's always room for improvement, and this is why we're doing the training.
Hey, Guido, I think we can all agree on this. When we're dealing with veteran firefighters, regardless of their skill level or fitness level, they're not candidates, recruits, as we would say. Treat them a little bit differently. And because, well, in Miguel's case, he has battalion chiefs. They're part of this scenario, and they're the fire floor division supervisor. And we also have phantom positions that Miguel will allude to. One thing that I think, Jimmy, you and I have talked a lot about is the standpipe evolution requiring several firefighters and companies is the essence of a multi-company operation, and it requires strong leadership, hopefully, ideally, from somebody who is not physically involved in advancing that hose line. I know that you get and I listen to your radio traffic and recordings. I mean, the first chief, if I believe, is going to take the lobby. I remember, and I also remember, because I studied and plagiarized your SOP, that your second due truck brings salvage covers to dike the elevator shaft on the fire floor, correct? So you're already anticipating that you're going to lose your elevators early on in the operation.
Amen to that. Yeah.
And man, we've got to, I am going to plagiarize the hell out of that. That is something while we still have the elevators, let's load it up with air bottles and get them up there before the elevators crap out.
One thing we
Yes, sir.
One thing we try to highlight with the training when we're talking to members about setting that inline gauge, we talk about doing it in ideal conditions during training. You could hear a guy yell, and based off of the area where we were doing the training, you could even see the stream, whether or not it was effective. But we try to hit the point of, if you could set this gauge in the stairwell, one, you're away from the elevators, which you won't want to compromise. You're away from electrical rooms, and hopefully you won't have to be on air, because irregardless of your experience, you could be the most experienced guy in the third floor when the fire's on 10. If you can't make it up, you can't make it up, and you're no use to the company. So it's one thing we try to highlight, and then we give a few tips or pointers here or there. Hey, get as far as you can. If it's a tight stairwell, maybe consider spraying into a unit. Granted, we don't want to ruin other people's stuff, but let's be real, you could be in awesome shape, but if you're walking up 30 floors with your gear, how useful are you by the time you get to the fire floor?
Exactly. Well, as we say, yes, we like to flow it in the stairwell. However, you cannot wash the abuelas down the escaleras, which means, you know what it means, Jimmy. You have a Hispanic wife, right? You can't wash Granny down the stairs when you're flowing the line. Ideally, the ideal situation for us is when the guy on the valve is in voice and visual contact with the guy on the pipe. Man, if we're going to have a pressure problem, let's figure it out right now. Just recently, there was a post about an engine company that has a door closed on an uncharged line, and subsequently the line. Well, if you can charge the line in the stairwell, although I know that it takes more people than if stretched dry to the door to the fire apartment. But if you've got pressure problems with either an old system pre-1993 or a pressure reducing valves, and you're a department that does not require them to be tested in accordance with NFPA 25, you have a potential problem, and you better identify it before you go to battle. And you can't be getting on that radio sending me 20 more pounds. It just isn't going to work like that, not in the heat of battle. So, what's a pipe, Miguel?
Nozzle.
Okay.
I wanted to mention, and I think this is a very important topic, and perhaps people have not given thought about that. I cannot think of a task-oriented type of discipline or evolution that is multi-company. And I'm going to tell you why with this is that initially in our makeup, in our response to high rises, is that we have the fifth truck officer. He's going to oversee and be in charge of that fire attack initially. We are going to get a fire attack chief up there. If I mention anything, that company officer has got to be hands off. If he's task oriented, we've actually lost the boat on this one too. Now he's engaged in task. So we will send the fire attack chief, and that's going to be usually your second incoming or your second due battalion chief. He's going to have a really, really good pair of running shoes, right? He's going to be on that fire floor. He's going to be in that stairwell. He's going to be checking conditions above. You're really getting the big picture of that fire floor, but also that important above the fire floor too. So we don't want to put the entire burden on his shoulder. And that's why the design of having a supervisory role and then in the form of a battalion chief. Sometimes it's not considered. And like you, Cap, I've seen so many SOPs, but you got to have the company officers do their job. And that's the lead. You can't do everything. That's the reason, hence, with that fire attack chief.
Miguel, can you tell us a little bit about Miami-Dade's program, which is very similar to Chicago's in that respect?
As far as what the SOP, how we're running our drills?
Inviting companies from around the county.
Well, what happens lots of times, especially the firefighters and the more, I guess, what you would call retirement stations, they see we got a drill coming, and of course they're going to bang out. They're going to call in sick those days. And what we tell the attendees, like, that's fine, they can bang out, but we have a lot more training days than they have sick days. So we're going to get them one way or another. But yeah, when we do invite them, we invite about 9 to 10 companies in. So half of one battalion and half of another battalion. So we don't deplete a whole battalion. And what we start from our North Division and our Central Division, and we just work our way down like that. So we're not depleting a whole area. And so we get a chief from each battalion. So like you were saying, the first arrival chief goes ahead and takes command, and then the next arrival chief goes ahead and he becomes that fire attack supervisor or division supervisor for that floor. And like you said, yeah. And the first 3 units, we send the first 2 units on fire attack. You got 2 units on the deploying the hose and hose management, and then the next unit is going to go ahead and start doing that the search on that floor. Then possibly that 4th unit, we're going to go ahead and have them take over as lobby control, and then go from there. And then as more units come, then we do incorporate victims on the fire floor, rescuing units, things like that. And depending on how elaborate the command wants to get, if we run out of units, then we go ahead and have them. We have some phantom units going on, and then we'll go from there.
Got a question, if you don't mind me.
Clark?
Miguel from Miami, and actually Jimmy from Chicago as well. With all the training, I was a training captain for a year as well, and we did a lot of high-rise training. Can you tell me some of your biggest deficiencies that you are identifying through your high-rise training in Miami and in Chicago? And I want to know if across the country, if we are finding the same issues in New York and Miami and Chicago and Las Vegas about what our guys are doing wrong in high-rise fires.
So you want us to air our dirty laundry? Is that it, Captain Lambing?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you mine is one of the ones that we identified is the communication. All right. You have multiple companies come together. And like you said, we're going to have rural companies coming in because we go five high-rise alarms on a high-rise fire. And you're going to have companies working together that have never worked together before. And you're going to have an officer tell another officer, hey, I need you to make me a hose stretch. Give me a hose stretch. What we talk about a hose stretch at Station 38 and at Station 11, 2 completely different hose stretches. And we found some pretty, for lack of a better term, pretty creative hose lays being deployed if you don't identify and specifically tell the other company officer what you want and need. So that was one of the things we identified.
Well, to your point, Clark, that happened our very first drill, right off the bat. We're trying to get everybody on the same page as far as having everybody across the board having the same hose, having the same hose pack. And some companies are actually, one chief in particular in our North Division, which is our high-rise corridor, is insistent on having a Cleveland load. And of course, the very first drill right off the bat, they brought in the Cleveland load, and it would just turn to crap.
And our chief of operations, he had just been promoted to chief of operations. We've got an operations chief that is highly experienced and highly respected. He got word of this and put an end to it. And actually, I was the guy, I'll air my dirty laundry mistake. I wrote a training bulletin that, and I'm ashamed of it now because I was wrong, that battalion chiefs could use that discretion as provided it was incumbent on them to train their people. That was a mistake. That was a mistake. We all got to be on the same page. And we could find ourselves in Miami-Dade County, which is we have municipality, Coral Gables, the city of Miami. They have more high-rise buildings than we do. Any company anywhere in Miami-Dade County could find themselves operating in a major high-rise fire. So that right there identified a problem in Miguel in a gentlemanly way. We fixed that problem. We're past the halfway mark. We're talking about advancing hose, whether you're doing it on the fire floor or in the stairway. That's up to your department to decide. But one thing is for certain. You're going to have hose laid in the stairwell if you're connected on the floor below. And if it's 2.5, there's going to be kinks, brother. Better have hose that has some inherent kink resistance. Hence, I give Key a hearty and sincere endorsement because that is the hose that our department has selected. And we're a big department. We could have picked any brand and grade hose we wanted. We haven't always had Key, but now we're exclusively Key combat ready hose for our 2.5, 2-inch, and 1 3/4 lines. Oh, and 3-inch. I believe it's a Key hose. I'm not sure if it's combat ready. Captain Mike, when it comes to getting companies together, you still consider that the rock? Do they bring everybody from the same geographic area, or do they disperse? Okay.
No,
And
they bring them throughout the city, but we have the high-rise building, the high-rise simulated building at the Rock, where we can go in, and it does have gas fires, but we have stretches that you can make and everything else. But the biggest thing, and I agree with what Clark said, is communication. Now, again, in the city of New York, with our portable radios, we found that the radios, the communications, the chief in the street wasn't getting up all the way because somebody else was talking and the chief's radio captured that. So now in our high-rise buildings, they have to put an auxiliary radio communication system, an ARC system, in our high-rise buildings so we can talk to the companies going up and down. Usually it's done in the elevator shafts with what they call leaky cable, so the radio signals can go back and forth. But the radio communication is probably the biggest problem. The other problem that we've seen when we've talked about the high-rise fires is the wind conditions change on the upper floors, the wind-driven fires. I've been to a couple in my career. Back then, we didn't call them wind-driven fires. Schomburg Plaza, we had 3 people jump from the 34th floor. I mean, the mother forced her 3 kids out the window on the 34th floor. Horrible, horrible fire. Okay, we lost 7 people at that fire, and it was a compactor fire. But we have to have the communications. We have to have the idea, and we have to have a set of plans that we are following. I don't care if you're the outside retirement community on the company on the edge of the city that doesn't do much. They're in a private dwelling. You know, we used to call places like that on Golden Pond, whatever. You can do whatever you want. But the policy has to be the same, because one day they're going to be relocated. I was talking to somebody the other day about the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. Most of the New York City Fire Department was at that run. My engine company from my firehouse on 102nd and 3rd Avenue went to 54th Street and 5th Avenue for a fire. That's like going from New York to Chicago for a fire for us. That's how far of a distance. It's so far out of your first, and they were the first engine to arrive. Okay, so you're going to have these things happen, and you have to have a plan. You have to have a communication plan. You have to have a standard operation plan, and that's why I like to see everybody, Miami, Chicago, everybody coming up with a plan so that we can work together to get this fire out, because it is going to be a major time to take fire to get these out. And now we're allowing, I mean, in the city of New York, what we call the very tall or the ultra high rises, you know, the 100-story buildings with all of the getting water on a 98-story residential building, getting water up 98 stories. If there is any failure of any of the building systems, I don't know if it's going to happen. I mean,
Captain Mike, are these the buildings that have a footprint of like 50 by 75?
a little bigger than that, but not much. No, some of them have a smaller footprint. One of the buildings that I know has a footprint that goes up 20 stories.
Yeah.
And then cantilevers out over another building, 30 feet, and then goes up another 74 floors on that 30-foot cantilever. They paid $66 million for the air rights over the other building. But I can't imagine 30 feet out and going up another 74 floors. Okay. And I mean, I saw the steel that was going into that building. It was incredible. It was, you know, I could have walked through the steel. That's how big this steel was. But it's amazing. And what we've taken into account all of the engineering, except if there's a fire. If there's a fire and impact load, the 2 loads we provide, they don't take those into account.
Captain Mike, for those of us that are building construction geeks, and I think everybody here is, and I'm proud to say, fascinating story about the Citibank fire, or the Citibank building, the Citibank building. Also had some type of cantilevered construction like that because they had to preserve for a church. I don't want to get into any details, but if you got, hey, while we're all sequestered at home, watching reruns of Emergency, you know that show, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, the show that ruined the fire service. Just kidding. Just kidding. We're watching reruns of Emergency. Google the Citibank and how an architectural or engineering student called upon the design engineer and identified a major defect and how they corrected that. It's a very interesting story. Daryl Liggins, from Oakland, California.
How are you doing?
All right. How does your department standardize, if that's the correct word, or get everybody on the same sheet of music when it comes to standpipe evolutions?
Hey,
Well-
Gustin, real quick, I'd like to hear Daryl Liggins' story about his fire he had in
Oh,
China.
yeah. Okay. I know this. You talked about this before. You got to tell the story about the communicating in a building that the folks.
Oh, yeah, don't give the
Please, go ahead, tell
punchline
us
yet.
the story, man. Please. It's great.
Well, first of all, I have a few things to say. When we were first getting standpipe equipment in the department, and as far as getting everybody on the same sheet of music, there was a lot of discussion at that time about should only the downtown companies have these packs and bags, or, because we have companies up where, wildland fires are their primary thing. And I absolutely felt like, no, everybody needs this because anybody could end up anywhere at any time. We're not that large of a city. And the other thing is, if you have it on your rig, when you go and get detailed or work a trade or something somewhere else, you're going to be more familiar with that equipment. So I didn't want people to overthink it. It's a bundle of hose and a bag full of stuff. So don't overthink it. If you're debating which company should have it, just have everybody have it, because anybody could end up anywhere. The other thing is, if you have that equipment, it allows you to do drills with this equipment more often. And we all know that the standpipe hose stretch is my favorite engine drill because it's unforgiving. It is unforgiving, and it encompasses the most difficult stretch an engine would have to do. And if you can do that well, you can do almost any other stretch well. We're dealing with staircases. You have firefighters have to adjust pressures. We're dealing with our heaviest, most difficult line. We're advancing our most difficult line to try and get down a narrow hallway. We have to communicate over distance. We're using radios in concrete and steel buildings. It encompasses everything. So if you have one drill to do, make it a standpipe drill, even if that's not your normal fire. So that helps get everybody on the same sheet of music. And transitioning to my story in Chinatown, I told this a couple of hangouts ago. This has to do with building systems. Now, I work in East Oakland, near the international airport. I am not in a high-rise district. I go down there on occasion, but 2 months ago, I was down there on the truck, and we get a report of a fire. When you're dealing with all those big buildings, you can't even see what you have until you're around the corner. So that's not my normal jive. But we round the corner. Okay, it's an outside fire. Some porta potties on fire next to an exit door that filled the stairway with smoke, set off the building alarm. People are coming out of the building, but everybody in the building thinks this building's on fire. It was sending smoke over all, how many stories was it? 13 stories, sending smoke through all 13 floors. I didn't want everybody coming out of this building. So I make myself to the fire control room. I find the panel, try to figure out how to talk on this thing. The first mic I use, okay, that's the wrong one. Okay, I finally figure out how to talk on this thing. We don't have a template. I know Chicago, you guys have a template for commercial and residential buildings, but I do the best I can. I tell everybody in the building, yeah, we had a fire. It's not in the building. It was outside. It's under control. Please stay in your apartment. You know, everybody keeps coming out. And I asked on the radio, hey, did everybody hear that on the speaker? And everybody said they could hear it, but nobody in the building could understand because it was full of all Chinese, Cantonese speaking people. Everybody heard me, but didn't understand a word I said. Anyway, that was just a lesson of knowing your area. I'm not a fan of having those, you know, pre-recorded fire alarm type of systems, but I definitely should have grabbed at least an occupant and had them translate for me over the speaker. I think that would have worked a little bit better.
We have that same issue over in North Miami Beach, where it's a lot of Russians. We have a heavy Russian influence over in portions of North Miami Beach, where we probably run into the same issue if we were to have a fire in one of those buildings. Communicating to those people, they probably wouldn't understand them.
I'm going to ask Chief Dan Shaw to paint a picture for us from a different perspective. You're a fire floor division supervisor. You are the chief. Chances are you're not going to be putting your hands on the hose line. And your chances are the hose line is going to be charged, if not partially advanced, before you get there. What are your priorities? What are your considerations as you're taking charge of that advance as a chief fire officer?
No, it's a very valid question, because, you know, the traditional thing we always see a lot of times with many of the after action reports is when you apply residential tactics to a commercial building, a high rise building, and you get in this slippery slope. And so, you know, for all of our fires, we always get two chiefs, and the initial battalion chief is the incident commander. The second one's always a tactical commander. And so when we send that person to the fire floor, you know, in my position as a deputy, typically I would end up taking command, and then we would have the battalions in the forward position. But as a battalion chief, it was no different than any other position, in that if I was given a geographic area, whether it was a division or a group for a task, you know, one is, what is the commander's intent? Like, what is the purpose of what we're doing on that floor? Are we there because this is the fire floor and we are concerned about getting this line in place? And do we have the right line in place? Do we have enough water for the fire and the fuel load? Is it wind driven? Is it not wind driven? And Fairfax is an interesting place because, you know, we do not suffer the same consequence of what DC does, because they can't build higher than the Washington Monument. We're not restricted. So our high rises are getting higher and higher and higher, and we end up having the biggest Virginia. But then we also run mutual aid with the city of Alexandria that has well over 100 non-sprinklered high rises. So we get the whole myriad of the brand new buildings to the older ones. And so that second part is, you know, commander's intent. What are we doing up on that fire floor? What is our purpose? Are we just stopping from the exposure from the lower floor? Are we there to, you know, get occupants out, or are we there for the firefight? And then two is accountability. It is wholly unrealistic. You know, I've seen it many times where a chief will get to that fire floor, and once they're called down a hallway, I don't know what you're doing. You can call down a hallway, and I can look at someone's zero visibility and say, do you have everyone with you? And they'll say, yeah. So a lot of times, we want our chief to be in that stairwell, to have a control of the situation and recognize, hey, do I have someone at the wheel who's telling me, because we use inline digital flow meters, to tell me, hey, do we have accurate flow coming out of that? Because we don't just do the flow, we do the flow and the pressure, so we can see what we have. And I'm relying upon that chief to be able to communicate that, hey, if I'm seeing a positive impact on the fire, then I'm expecting that chief is telling me, hey, we have good flow, we have good pressure. And then I'm expecting the driver to tell me, hey, we're just supplementing the system, the fire pump's working, and everything's meshing together, so that if something doesn't match and the fire's not going out, I can track it back to whatever that thing is. Is it the environmental conditions? Is it a building system issue? Is it between the riser and the hose line, or is it between the FDC up to the inside up to the riser, or am I going back to my lobby control company and he's telling me the fire pump's not running? So I really value that tactical commander to be able to give us intelligent information to make sure that what we're seeing is matching what we're thinking is occurring, and that we have a good commander's intent, and we know we have clear accountability of all those people who are operating in that geographic region.
I've mentioned this before. It's not my idea, but I learned this from a very experienced battalion chief that spent a lot of years in a high-rise district. It has to do with accountability. He lines his people up on the hose line. Nozzle firefighter is 1. The officer is 2. The firefighter that is going to ultimately be at the door to the fire compartment, if it is a residential or a corner, is 3. Just to oversimplify, at the risk of oversimplifying, 4 is going to be the fire floor stair landing. 5 is going to be the mid landing, and 6, and if we have more, are going to be on the floor below. Okay, now you can't see anybody, but we need more hose. 4, 5, and 6, go back to the stairway and advance me up some more hose. Okay.
Yep.
How we doing? What I can't remember who's on the nozzle, even what company it is. But you have these guys sound off, and it sounds very simplistic, but you got to be simple like that. And you got to have these guys sound off, and throughout that evolution, that's their number. So you can't see number 2, but can you hear number 2? You know, that's the type of thing.
And Bill, I think you open up, bigger part of this is like, look, no manual will ever put out a fire, but having organizational manuals, operational manuals, SOGs, whatever it is, especially for one of the most strategically taxing fires you'll run, a high-rise fire, it's so vitally important. And for us, like you talked about the Nova region, we're a large department, but we run automatic aid with all these other jurisdictions that come in, and we all have the same manual. So to your point is that while we have that type of accountability system, we know where every person's supposed to operate without them saying a word. We know where those 5 engines, 2 trucks, and a rescue company all should be, and they should be there unless they voice that they're doing something different or they're giving a different direction. So we have that expectation of where that first truck is going, the second truck is going, and if they are going to deviate, they'll communicate it back to us. And so that comes, not just the manual, but also the discipline to follow the manuals and understand the greater scope of it. And I think it's something it was said before by Jimmy, and it's so vitally important. And God, I learned that when I became a chief officer, is that the small unit leader is what makes us highly successful in every fire we run. I can try to invoke any measure of accountability or command and control I want, but if that small unit leader as a company officer doesn't exercise that on the fire floor and the way they train, then it all just goes down the gutter. So they are so vitally important, especially when we get to the high-rise incident.
Oh, if you guys could talk about the fire investigation team. That's going to be your first, I'm speaking now, our brothers from Chicago. You and Clark County have something in common, that your investigation team, in other words, your first company that's going to ascend, companies, plural, to ascend. It is 2 companies. Is that correct, Captain Clark?
Yes. The whole investigation team is 4 companies, but minimum of 2 companies must ascend together. You can't go by yourself.
Minimum of 2 companies must ascend together. And that is the case with your fire investigation team as well. Isn't that, Jimmy? Guido?
Yeah, Cap, to answer that, the 5th team for us are grouped. It's a first engine, first truck. All right, they're going to be making the investigation. Along that way, again, it's all about, probably to sum it up, it's about making a intelligent ascent. That's the whole purpose and premise behind the 5th team, which fire investigation team. And then later on, as we establish, but those few crucial minutes, I like to say the first 5 minutes is going to make or break your operation. Your first 5 minutes may actually dictate your next 5 hours. That 5th team needs to be well coordinated. Again, communication and well disciplined in this. Again, it's task driven. And we've enjoyed tremendous success with this setup using our 5th team. We've benefited.
And can you tell us a little bit about your rats? Can we talk about rats for a minute?
The rapid, yes. Again, giving birth from that 69 West Washington. Again, I mentioned we had learned in the hard way, and I'm going to tell you this, and whoever is listening. At a high-rise fire, you are going to find people in your stairwells. You are going to find them. All right. In our high-rise fires, we find people in places you'd never even believe. You got to search the stairwells, and that's the whole premise behind that is the rapid ascension team is to check the stairwells, bottom up, top down. Remember the stairwell searches, especially that primarily that attack stairwell prior to fire attack, during the fire, and afterwards. Stairwell searches are very high on the priority list, and they cannot be overlooked. We have companies later down outside of the FIT team that will be totally responsible for those tasks, checking those stairwells.
We're just about at the end of our meeting today, and of course, we just scratched the surface. I want to do this again. It is so important, and the things that we have in common are as numerous and as important as what our differences. But I think fundamentally, we all understand and appreciate the team concept of multi-company, honest information, good basic hose line management, strong leadership. I think no matter where we at, regardless of our departments, we're all like that. So just another shout out to Keith. I know I must sound like a broken record, which, nobody knows what a broken record is anymore. It's like in an emergency, dial 911. Dial what? I'm the only guy that has a rotary phone, but I'm old.
There's the jitterbug.
All right. So I want to do this again. Jimmy, Guido, I want to have your chief on at another time. We've just scratched the surface. And it's a fascinating subject. I thank Key for being there for us, making this possible. And also as a member of Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department for making us look good, making our job easier, making us more proficient, because you can't kink the hose. You can't kink key hose. It's very difficult to kink. So, Jimmy, Guido, God bless you, your brothers in Chicago, and we're going to do this again. And we all miss seeing each other at FDIC, okay? We all do. We look forward to that every year. Well, this is as close as we're going to get, fellas, right here. Is the brotherhood that we're going to share, and sisterhood, that we share right here is as close as we're ever going to get to an FDIC being together. So for everybody, our brothers and sisters, stay well, stay healthy, follow the guidelines, and maybe we'll see the light at the end of this tunnel, and we'll have an entirely better and different situation a month from now. God bless you and keep you safe.
Nice to meet you all.